That has come complete. Terminator Dark Fate is a worthy sequel to Terminator 2 and is worth seeing in theaters. So go see it right now. Hey guys, yours truly, Brevin Thompson, here to finally talk about Terminator Dark Fate. Who, man, are a lot of people pissed about this movie and are a lot of people happy about this movie. Me, I had a hell of a time with this movie, and I will admit, I had my doubts before this movie even came out, but when I heard that Tim Miller was directing it, and also having James Cameron produce it, and having Linda Hamilton back as Sarah Connor, my excitement was through the roof, and the fact that it was a rated R film too really boosted up the hype for me. And I know that it can also build up some hype for the fans if you are a fan of the Terminator franchise, but when it comes to the Terminator franchise, especially the first two films, they earned their R rating for a reason because it has to stick with some of that level of violence. Because when it comes to the film's level of violence, especially the first film, well, mostly the first film, it was a great action sci-fi horror film, and it works extremely well. The second film, while it does have a decent amount of blood here and there throughout that movie, it still was great. And the other sequels, Terminator 3, even though with the R rating it seemed really pointless and it felt like a PG-13 movie, and Salvation and Genesis, they were PG-13, and, well, Salvation I have a soft spot for, but Genesis is trash. Dark Fate, easily the best sequel that we've had since Terminator 2, and I am happy to say that I really like this movie. It's not all by means perfect or anything. I mean, there were a lot of things that I loved about the movie, and there were some minor nitpicks that I have with the film. But where do we start with the plot? This will be spoiler-free, of course, but I'm also thinking of doing a spoiler review. I don't think I've done a spoiler review for newer release since Avengers Endgame, but why the hell not? I mean, so, yeah. So this film starts off sometime in the 1990s, which will give away a huge spoiler, but I'll go into more detail in that one scene in my spoiler review. So a couple of years have passed since the event. Many years have passed since the events of Terminator 2, and now we have a new Terminator model who is sent back through time to kill this young girl who is a very important figure in the future. And we have another a resistance fighter who is also a cyborg who was sent back to protect her. And Sarah Connor has been hunting down Terminators for the past 2 decades, and is also siding with Grace, who is the cyborg that was sent back to protect this girl named Danny from the Rav-9, who is a Terminator that has an endoskeleton which is covered with a mimetic polyalloy, almost similar to the TX, but what makes it more unique is that it can separate. That the mimetic polyalloy can separate from its endoskeleton, which is something we haven't seen before, and that is one badass Terminator. And our 3 heroes also gain the assistance of a T-800, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this film is awesome. It's easily one of the best action movies I've seen all year. It would be hard for me to decide which action film that I love more. I love John Wick Chapter 3, and it was awesome, but when it comes to the Terminator franchise, it's really important to me, but I would put this and John Wick Chapter 3 on an action scale sort of on a tie, honestly, because it's at that level. Tim Miller's direction for this film, I love it, and it clearly shows that he has a lot of love for this franchise, and I loved his success with Deadpool, and Deadpool is one of my all-time favorite comic book films, and it will always remain one of my favorite to this day, and probably will remain that way until the day I die. So, but as for James Cameron's involvement, I am glad that he came back as a producer, but he didn't come back to direct because of his work on the Avatar sequels, which I honestly don't think is really necessary because sure, there are some people that would want sequels to Avatar, but I don't know. Whatever James Cameron wants to do, I guess. Biggest positive for me is Linda Hamilton's return as Sarah Connor. She was badass throughout the film, and she is still the same Sarah Connor that we'd known from the first two movies, and definitely the same Sarah Connor that we knew back in Terminator 2. And like I said, kicks ass throughout the film. Arnold Schwarzenegger, as for how much of an impact that he has on this film, honestly, he doesn't appear until like halfway through the film. Well, he does appear in one earlier scene, which I will not get away because spoilers. But he does have an interesting impact on what happens later in the movie and what his backstory is. I will admit, for some people, it will be a bit confusing and a bit silly at the same time. Mackenzie Davis as Grace. Holy shit. I'm not normally frightened by a cyborg woman, but if I ever encountered this girl, I'm backing away slowly because she was a real badass. She was so awesome in this film, and I really want to see what she does in the future, because Mackenzie Davis not only was kick-ass throughout the film, but she was really good. I mean, her acting, she was great. She was phenomenal. That's what James Cameron loves in his films. He loves strong female characters. Sarah Connor, definitely a strong female character, has been in the first two films. Grace is also one of them. And Danny, who's played by Natalia Reyes, she was great, and she goes from this one girl, this normal everyday girl who's just trying to have a normal life, and then when the Terminator shit starts happening, she also becomes a strong character in her own right, and it works extremely well, and I loved her throughout the film. And for some people, her role in the future is a bit, it can be a bit off for some fans, but for me, I like that they're bringing some new ground for what they have in the future of the franchise. As for what they're going to do for later movies, I honestly don't know what they're going to do, but if they do make a sequel for this movie, I will be more than happy to see it. If it's good, though. But this is easily the best sequel that we've had since Terminator 2. As for my nitpicks, there was one moment earlier in the movie where some of the de-aging effects for certain characters just seemed a bit off. As well as some moments during the action sequences, like some where the Terminators are fighting underwater, and some of the there was one effect that it just really didn't work, and of course there's this silly airplane sequence, which is kind of awesome and a bit silly at the same time. The action sequences throughout the film are phenomenal, and they're the best that we've seen probably since Terminator 2. And this is probably the one of the few Terminator movies in the franchise that I've truly enjoyed since Terminator 2, and it's, like I said, it's the best sequel that we had since T2. It's not as perfect as the first two films. It's a hell of a lot better than the other movies that we've had over the years. Way better than Terminator 3, by far. It is an improvement over Salvation, and for sure, hell of a lot better than Genesis, which erased that movie from my mind. And it is fucking awesome, and I loved it. I don't say this is perfect, like I said. There are some issues that a lot of people will probably have with the film, especially in its opening act right before the credits start. But above all, that really didn't keep me from enjoying the movie because it was just thrilling. It kept me on the edge of my seat. And I never enjoyed a Terminator movie this much since Terminator 2. So I'm going to give Terminator Dark Fate an A minus. Had to get that off my chest. So what were your thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate? Let me know in the comment section below. And I know this movie hasn't really made much money at the box office for its opening weekend. So please check this out. It is definitely worth your time. And thank you so much as always for watching. I'm looking forward to doing more reviews very soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new movies, and of course, you know where to find me.